In the world of high-end audio, one brand defies logic, revered by millions and ridiculed by purists. Long before Bose turned into a global empire, an MIT professor was so disappointed by his new hi-fi system that he launched a radical experiment. Should speakers be built for specs or for how we actually hear? This controversy would ignite a war between measurement and perception, and what Bose's research uncovered inside the secret labs at M1T would change everything you thought you knew about sound. But why does this divide still fuel debate today? In the late 1950s, inside MIT's Research Laboratory of Electronics, Amar Bose and his team faced a challenge that most audio engineers ignored. How do people actually experience sound in a real room? Instead of focusing on charts and lab measurements, they set up experiments designed to measure perception itself. Their approach started with a simple question: what does a listener truly hear, not just what a microphone records? To answer this, Bose's lab built what looked like a mannequin head with microphones placed precisely where human ears would be. This dummy head rig could capture sound exactly as a person would hear it, including the subtle cues from reflections, echoes, and the shape of the head itself. Tests went far beyond traditional frequency sweeps. The team played music and speech through speakers in various rooms, then used the dummy head recordings to replay those sounds for listeners through headphones, recreating the original acoustic environment as faithfully as possible. Bose organized his research around a three-part framework: the device creating the sound, the measurements taken in controlled conditions, and most importantly, the listener's perception. By comparing direct sound to the complex mix of reflections in concert halls, the team noticed that much of what people described as spacious or realistic came from the sound bouncing off walls and ceilings, not just from the speakers themselves. These early tests revealed that measuring human experience required more than just numbers. It demanded a whole new way of thinking about audio. Amar Bose's breakthrough came late one night, hunched over stacks of data and the humming TX2 computer at MIT. He had been searching for a pattern in how sound fills a concert hall, running hours of digital convolution on music recorded at Tanglewood. The process was slow, 20 hours of computing for every second of music, but the results were impossible to ignore. When Bose and his team analyzed the numbers, they found that only a small fraction of what reaches a listener's ears in a live concert is direct sound from the stage. The overwhelming majority, close to 89%, arrives as a cascade of reflections bouncing off walls, ceilings, and seats before ever reaching the audience. This wasn't just a trivial detail. The ratio, roughly 89% reflected to 11% direct sound, explained why live music felt so spacious and enveloping, while even the best hi-fi systems sounded flat and boxed in at home. Bose realized that most loudspeakers ignored this fundamental truth, firing sound straight ahead and measuring well in labs, but failing to recreate the immersive experience of a real performance. He began to see a new path. If a speaker could mimic the way sound energy spreads in a concert hall, it might finally bridge the gap between live and recorded music. This insight, grounded in hours of painstaking measurement and early digital analysis, would become the foundation for a radically different kind of loudspeaker. For Bose, the answer wasn't in perfecting the device alone, but in understanding how people actually hear and why reflections matter more than anyone had guessed. When the Bose 901 hit the market in 1968, it didn't just launch a new speaker, it ignited a firestorm. The design looked nothing like its competitors. Each cabinet held 9 identical drivers, one faced forward while 8 pointed toward the back wall. The idea was to flood the room with reflected sound, echoing Amar Bose's research that in a concert hall, nearly 90% of what you hear comes from reflections, not direct sound. This was psychoacoustics in hardware form, a speaker built not for perfect measurements, but for the way people actually hear music in real spaces. Sherwin Greenblatt, a young engineer at Bose, explained that using multiple full-range drivers helped smooth out irregularities and created that enveloping sense of spaciousness. But there was a catch. To make the 901 work, Bose needed a custom active equalizer. The equalizer boosted the bass by as much as 18 decibels to compensate for the small drivers and the way energy was lost in all those reflections. It also lifted the treble, fighting the natural roll-off that comes from bouncing sound off walls. And the result was a speaker that demanded serious amplifier power, much more than the average home system of the time. At first, some reviewers were captivated. Early press called the 901 revolutionary, praising its ability to fill a living room with music that felt alive, but the honeymoon didn't last. Audiophile magazines soon published scathing measurements. Frequency response curves showed wild peaks and dips. Distortion numbers ran high, especially in the bass. Critics accused Bose of ignoring the science, calling the 901 a triumph of marketing over engineering. Letters poured in. Some defended the immersive sound, others condemned the design as a step backward for hi-fi. The debate was no longer just about speakers, it was about what mattered more, what the chart said or what people actually heard. Dan Gauger sat at his Framingham workbench, surrounded by circuit boards, headphones, and a tangle of wires. For more than a decade, he and a small team at Bose had been chasing a problem that most people simply accepted: the relentless roar of jet engines, the hum of a subway, the steady drone that made travel exhausting. Amar Bose's original frustration on a noisy flight had sparked the idea, but it was Gauger's patience and obsession that kept the project alive through years of setbacks and skepticism. Breakthrough came in the late 1990s, after 14 years of unprofitable research and countless prototypes. Instead of just muffling noise with thick padding, the new QuietComfort headphones listened to the world outside. Tiny microphones on the ear cups picked up incoming sound, while onboard electronics generated a sound wave that was the exact inverse, out of phase by 180 degrees. When these two waves met, they canceled each other out, wiping away low-frequency noise before it ever reached the ear. This approach, known as active noise cancellation, used a combination of feed-forward and feedback loops. Microphones both outside and inside the ear cup constantly monitored and adjusted to changing noise. When the QuietComfort headphones launched in 2000, they did not just appeal to audiophiles or engineers. Airline travelers, business people, and everyday commuters snapped them up. For the first time, long-haul flights and busy terminals could become peaceful, private spaces. Adoption soared, and within a few years, Bose's noise-canceling technology became a must-have for frequent travelers. The gamble on years of research, often at a loss, had paid off. QuietComfort did not just change how people listened to music, it changed what they expected from headphones. The stakes had moved far beyond the world of audiophile debates. Now, the question was not just about sound quality, but about comfort, focus, and the promise of quiet in a noisy world. A UMIC 1 measurement microphone stands at ear height, ready to capture what the numbers say. The engineer cues up a frequency sweep, sending a precise tone through each speaker, first the Bose 901, then a reference model known for its flat response. Waveforms appear in real time on the laptop, each curve revealing peaks and valleys across the audible spectrum. The 901's signature emerges: a broad hump in the mid-bass, a dip through the upper mids, and a sharp rise in the high frequencies. Impulse response plots show a dense cluster of reflections, energy arriving late, echoing the design's focus on room-filling sound. The reference speaker, by contrast, draws a tighter, flatter line, its impulse response clean and contained. The engineer toggles between the plots, pausing as the differences jump out. With the data on screen, the debate between perception and measurement takes on a new clarity. Sean Olive's listener studies at Harman threw gasoline on the fire. In double-blind tests with more than 280 participants, the so-called Harman target, a frequency response with extra bass and a gentle treble lift, won out over flat neutral measurements. 64% of listeners gravitated toward this curve, not the ruler straight line that audiophile charts worship. Even trained listeners, when pressed, picked the sound with more body and energy. But the story doesn't end there. About 1 in 5 listeners preferred less bass, and a smaller group wanted even more. On forums, audiophile reviewers dissect these findings, some calling them proof that science can't measure enjoyment, others dismissing the tests as irrelevant. The numbers are clear, but the arguments only get louder. In the end, preference refuses to fit inside a lab report. Even now, most listeners choose what moves them, not what measures best. As audio technology keeps advancing, the divide between science and sensation only grows. In the end, the argument is not about speakers, it is about how we define good sound. That debate still shapes every playlist, every purchase,